Hey everyone, it's been a while. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about my experience using Windows on ARM and specifically the Lenovo Thinkpad X13s in the last year or so. Now, before we get there, some channel updates are in order. Some of you have reached out to ask where I've been and if I'm quitting YouTube, which makes sense since I haven't uploaded any new videos in a while. I'm just taking a little pause for now. There have been several changes in my life over the last year, the biggest of which was moving across the Pacific to start grad school. I still anticipate doing tech and car DIY videos and random watch videos when I'm done, but they all have to take a backseat for now. Speaking of car DIY videos, I still have a few unpublished ones and decided to split them off to a different channel, Ches Does Cars. Tech DIYs and watches will stay in this channel. This will be yet another journey towards view time and 1,000 subs, but I think it's for the best to avoid diluting this channel too much. If you're interested in cars and enjoy the style of videos in this channel, please consider subscribing to Ches Does Cars. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, back to today's video. It's going to be a blend about living with Windows on ARM in general and the Lenovo Thinkpad X13s specifically. With this whole experience in consideration, I'll present things in a top things I like and don't like format before closing it out with final thoughts and future considerations. What is the Lenovo Thinkpad X13s anyway? It was Lenovo's last attempt at Windows on ARM products before any of the new Snapdragon Elite processors launched. This thing is powered by the previous generation Qualcomm 8CX Gen 3 processor. I purchased it specifically for grad school and have used it for a year at the time of shooting this video. As the name suggests, it comes in the ThinkPad line's X series form factor and build quality, which I'll get to later. There weren't a lot of options to spec out for this model. Mine has 16 gigs of RAM and a 500 or 512 gig drive. The screen is a 300 nit multi-touch LCD. There were higher configurations available for this laptop. I could have gotten an X13s with 32 gigs of memory and 400 nit low-power non-touch LCD, for example. I thought not having the low-power LCD wasn't too big of a miss since ARM systems are supposedly power efficient. I'll get to this in a bit. As for RAM, time and patience were not on my side when I bought this. I just couldn't find the 32 gig version on eBay back then. I would have sprung for that one had it been available. And that brings us to my first dislike. From a channel with a ton of ThinkPad DIY videos, you had to see this coming. Limited upgradability. You can replace a storage drive, which is a PCIe 2242 drive, and that's about it. Maybe we'll do this in a future video. RAM is unfortunately soldered. If I wanted more memory, I'll need a new motherboard and might as well just buy another X13s entirely. I also checked the hardware maintenance manual for this laptop and saw that the LCD screen's cable snakes under the motherboard. Replacing the screen isn't impossible, but it's definitely going to be a lot more work than the T480 and T580 that we previously featured in this channel. Next, hardware issues. If you rely on a lot of hardware to get your work done, this will be your biggest issue. There are generic drivers available for common devices such as printers and scanners, but you surely won't get the most out of your hardware if they have special features that the generic drivers don't cover. This was pretty challenging when I was trying to connect to the Ricoh standalone laser printer that we have at school. I went through several generic printer drivers by trial and error before finding one that didn't make the printer print random symbols and allowed me to select paper options beyond letter and A4. There are workarounds for general hardware such as that, but for niche ones such as a vehicle OBD2 dongle that you use to tune your car's engine, for example, you're pretty much out of luck. Thankfully, I still have my ThinkPad T580 for that. Kind of related to the last point, VPNs also don't really work that well with the Windows on ARM system. My guess is that VPN options try to talk with network drivers to reroute your internet traffic. Because Windows on ARM software emulation doesn't cover driver support that well, or because network drivers for this platform are rather niche for VPN providers to cover, at least at the time of filming, things don't work out that well when you try to reroute your internet traffic. Moving on to issues specific to the X13s. The fingerprint reader that Lenovo installed on this one is rather glitchy. I'd like to think that it's something that's specific to my unit, but plenty of old X13s reviews online call out the fingerprint reader as well. I can split my issues with the fingerprint scanner into three. First, the fingerprint reader doesn't always activate after the laptop wakes from sleep. Second, the fingerprints don't register correctly until after multiple tries. There were some days when this problem almost didn't exist and others when it just seemed like this thing was programmed for failure. Lastly, some weird, repeating glitch made the laptop ask me to set up new fingerprints after it resumes from sleep. This basically allows anyone to log into the system without any sort of security authentication. I haven't found any fixes for the first issue, and there are still instances when I have to enter my passcode after the laptop resumes from sleep. This seems to be a hardware thing, like the fingerprint reader failing to start or something. For the second and third issue, I'm happy to share that diving into the BIOS settings and disabling Lenovo's glitchy discrete TPM in favor of Microsoft's Pluton TPM made fingerprint recognition almost perfect. I haven't encountered fingerprint reset issues since I changed this setting a few months ago. Fingers crossed that it'll never come back again. My last semi-complaint is a modern ThinkPad classic, shallow key travel. There are no workarounds for this. It took some time for me to get used to, but I've now typed so many papers on this thing I shouldn't really be complaining about it anymore. The X13s's keyboard only feels foreign whenever my muscle memory sort of resets after I spend prolonged periods on my T15G or T16 AMD, but it is what it is. Life with the X13s isn't all that bad. Let's move on to what I like about it. First up, software integration is almost seamless. There's been a huge change over the last year on this front. When I first got the laptop, Dropbox and Google Chrome for ARM didn't exist at all. Spotify for ARM, on the other hand, did exist but was extremely difficult to find the download link for. These all have ARM versions now. I ended up switching to Microsoft Edge at that time but still use Dropbox and Spotify extensively today. For obvious reasons, the Microsoft Office suite is very well integrated with Windows on ARM. Using more popular work software such as Zoom hasn't been a problem either. I don't think something like SAP Business One, for example, has a Windows on ARM version just yet, but for this category, Windows on ARM does a fairly decent job at emulating 64-bit environments. I wouldn't count it for gaming though. You can see what's running on which software architecture in the Windows Task Manager, but like I said, emulation is good enough for you to have a hard time distinguishing whether you're running on native ARM or 64-bit emulation. Kind of related to software is Etiquette CPU performance. I use the word Etiquette here because the Qualcomm 8CX Gen 3 processor that the ThinkPad X13s comes with was never intended to smash benchmark tests and stuff. It's very much a mid-tier CPU focused more towards efficiency than outright performance. That said, it's done spreadsheet, writing, and note-taking work well. Web browsing, media consumption, and video conferencing all work without issues. As more software gets ported for Windows on ARM, I expect the 8CX Gen 3 processor to function even smoother over time. Because of this, I think I'll get a lot of years of use out of the X13s. One of the best things I like about this laptop and ARM processors in general is the lack of cooling fans. It doesn't need one because passive cooling is usually enough to get by, kind of like smartphone processors, which share similar architectures with the 8CX and this laptop. The laptop stays cool to the touch most of the time, and the lack of exhaust fans makes for super quiet computing. Because there are no vents on the sides and bottom of this thing, I can use it on top of soft surfaces such as my bed or sofa without having to worry about overheating. Another thing I like about having an ARM processor in this thing is the amazing battery life. This laptop consumes power almost like a smartphone. I mentioned missing out on the 400 nit low power LCD earlier, but even then, I can get multiple days of on and off use from this laptop. Battery life on the X13s is around an hour or two longer than the dual battery T480 we previously built in this channel, despite having only half the capacity, 49.5 watt hours to be specific. And that's just awesome. Because we don't need moving parts and heavy high-capacity batteries inside, laptops with ARM processors also have weight advantages over their traditional processor counterparts. The X13s weighs in at just a hair over 2 pounds, less than half what the T480 and T580 weigh. Since this is an X-series ThinkPad, build quality is excellent. Almost everything is made out of recycled magnesium. Only this bottom cover right here is made out of plastic. Ironically, this is where they decide to put a tiny note about the recycled magnesium. Because the X13s is built on a block of magnesium, flex is almost non-existent. The material also helps the laptop feel cool to the touch when you're using it. You'll notice that I put risers on the rear edge of this laptop. I got used to the extended battery tilt on the T480 and T580 and couldn't live with flat keyboards anymore. So there you have it, the top things I like and don't like about Windows on ARM and the Lenovo Thinkpad X13s. Would I get another ThinkPad that runs on ARM architecture in the future? I'd say yes. The trajectory of software support is very encouraging, and the latest slew of Snapdragon Elite machines amid the Copilot or AI push definitely put ARM processors in the maps of software developers. If they make one of these with a numpad and a slightly larger battery, yet still manage to keep the weight under 3 pounds, I'm definitely falling in line. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.